Coming up on 2020 on ID, a movie filming on location and a crew member doing the job she loved.
Just always wanted to be around her. She wanted to do bigger things, work on features, and get her name out there.
The scene is set.
Hospital bed laying across the track.
Then 37 railroad cars barreling down and no time to stop.
Just kept saying over and over, Lord help us, God help us, Lord help us.
Metal flying, the crew scrambling for their lives, too late. The director who had to get the shot, the camera assistant that died dodging the train, and her grieving parents looking for justice.
The arrogance of someone putting my baby on the track.
Terror on the trestle, and a young girl dying of cancer reaching out to one of America's most famous couples.
Thank you for letting me love you.
And Brad Paisley and Kimberly Williams Paisley offering emotional support.
And I remember thinking, what if this is a hoax? But what if it's not a hoax? And I have a chance to help this little girl.
But if it's a lie, then who is she?
This person was crazy.
And how many other celebrities were targets?
And I vowed that night, I said, I'm gonna find her.
Photos with GPS tags, a trip down a long hallway.
You have the right to remain silent.
And a confession of catfishing. Welcome to 2020 on ID. I'm John Quinones. The entertainment industry has always been marked by ambition and longing, filled with those yearning to be a part of it and those driven to make their mark. Coming up, two stories of people whose ambitions would lead them into the grip of the law. First, a director who wanted the perfect shot. But as Chris Connolly first told us in 2015, a decision he made would come with a very heavy price and cost one crew member her life.
Along the muddy waters of Georgia's Altamaha River grow Spanish moss and cypress trees. And standing among them is this century-old train trestle, where, on February 20th, 2014, a movie's first scene would quickly turn into a place of real-life horror.
Just kept saying over and over, Lord help us, God help us, Lord help us.
Captured on this 17-second video, members of the film crew running for their lives as a locomotive bears down on them. And on that crew, this young woman, filled with bright promise, who would suffer an all but unimaginable fate for doing the job she loved.
She fell in love with the camera.
She was Sarah Jones, raised in South Carolina without showbiz connections. She earned her film crew stripes during an internship in Charleston on Army Wives, as her parents Richard and Elizabeth remember.
Why do you think she was drawn to the camera department?
It's a challenge of it, I think. I think it, for the most part, it's a man's world. And I think that was a little bit of a challenge to her.
Competition.
Sarah Jones would become a camera assistant, the last sight the camera would see before a scene began. For multiple seasons on The Vampire Diaries.
This guy doesn't know that you're a vampire, let's keep.
Such stars as Nina Dobrev and Ian Somerhalder knew Sarah well.
Sarah, the first time I saw her, I mean, she was literally right in front of my face. She was doing the slate. You couldn't help but notice Sarah Jones.
Great.
Just always wanted to be around her.
She always had a smile on her face and was just the uber professional.
Even on the vacations she loved, Sarah Jones liked setting up her shots just so.
She always was up for anything. She wanted to do bigger things, go to new countries, work on features, and get her name out there.
Rolling!
Sarah took her own fateful path, taking a camera assistant gig based out of Savannah on the movie Midnight Rider. Based on a memoir by Greg Allman of the Allman Brothers, starring Oscar winner William Hurt, Midnight Rider would be an independent film, written, produced, and directed by this man, Randall Miller.
Sarah mentioned to me that it is a low-budget film, and she was a little bit surprised that some of the people did not have the level of expertise that she expected.
On February 20th, 2014, cast and crew drove to this location in Doctortown, Georgia. Among those arriving were Sarah and hairstylist Joyce Gilliard.
I was told that it wasn't actual principal photography. The actual day we're supposed to start shooting was going to be that Monday.
But once they got there, the crew realized Randall Miller wanted to shoot a full scene, a dream sequence in which Greg Allman, from his hospital bed, sees his late brother, guitarist Dwayne Allman, across the bridge. Shooting began on the side of the tracks. Then, after 2 trains passed by, it came time to set up for the day's money shot, 30 feet above the water.
According to one of our witnesses, that Randall Miller said, move the bed up onto the tracks after the 2 trains had come by. Hospital bed laying across the tracks, not running with the tracks, but across the tracks.
Bo Giannakopoulos, the photographer on the set, recalls that it was the star who dared to ask the most important question.
There was concern from William, and he did voice that concern. He asked if another train came, how much time would we have to get off the tracks? We would have approximately 60 seconds.
I was more or less 60 seconds to get off the track, and I started praying. I'm mad at myself because I didn't say something.
There was no on-set medic. There were no railroad officials present. 2 takes of the scene were in the can. Then, just before 4:30 p.m.
That's when they yelled that there was a train coming. And there was a sort of a pause.
And I saw the train. And you just immediately started running.
CSX train Q12519 with 2 locomotives and 37 freight cars was barreling down the track at an estimated 57 miles per hour.
I saw the light of that train. It was like the train was right there. So you had seconds to figure out what you were going to do.
Cast and crew had to run toward the oncoming train along this narrow pathway to save their lives. This extraordinary video captures the scream of the fast-approaching train's horn. As Randall Miller and other crew members frantically try to yank the hospital bed off the tracks, only to see it fall apart.
It seemed to be so far away, and then all of a sudden just like that. It was almost like an explosion.
When I realized that I could not get to land, that's when I ran to the side and held on to the iron girder, and I prayed that I didn't get hit by the train. The pressure from the wind from the train was so strong that holding on to the girder, I wasn't able to. It pulled me off.
The train struck Joyce Gilliard's left arm after smashing into the hospital bed. Joyce closed her eyes.
I couldn't believe what was happening. Thought about dying. And my family getting that call.
The train's impact had snapped a bone in Joyce's left arm. Blood poured from the wound. Joyce opened her eyes once more.
Sarah was the first person I saw. She was lying on the side of the tracks dead. You didn't know it was her. You didn't know it was her.
I received a phone call from one of her friends. She said, "Sarah's no longer here." I said, "What do you mean? You mean as in dead?" She said, "Yes, ma'am."
It was rough. I mean, it took the wind out of me. It's very, very, very hard.
Sarah Jones was 27 years old. Hours later, the phone rang again. It was the director of Midnight Rider.
Randall Miller called us that day. He was very upset.
He was crying.
He was nearly hysterical. And he was saying, "I'm so sorry." He couldn't say much more than that.
But why had Randall Miller allowed his crew to shoot on live tracks? Sarah Jones's parents and police demand answers. Did he have permission?
He had been told, "Don't go on those tracks," and he did anyway.
Stay with us. Video without sound obtained by ABC News captures the terror on the trestle during the shooting of the film Midnight Rider. Actor William Hurt lies on a hospital bed until a yell that a train is coming. Suddenly, cast and crew move quickly to get off the trestle and to move the bed as the train barrels towards them. A cameraman hanging onto a girder, shooting off the bridge as part of the bed's railing is thrown off. And the train roars across, its shadow playing on the trees below. Then, with the train stopped on the trestle, so little room to squeeze past, images of director Randall Miller and other stunned crew members just beginning to assess the nightmarish scene in front of them.
At first, it was like a quiet, like people were in shock. I remember hearing somebody say, "Oh my gosh, she's dead."
The horrifying news that 27-year-old camera assistant Sarah Jones had been killed by a train on the set of the film Midnight Rider reached her good friends on the Vampire Diaries just a few hours after it happened.
And I got the call. We just sat in the car going to set, and it was just pure shock.
She just left too soon. She would have been. Yeah, it was just too soon.
I was angry, really angry.
Immediately after the accident, investigators sought to figure out who had failed to protect the Midnight Rider crew. Police questioning producer Jay Sedrish about shooting on active train tracks.
Of course, our question was, did you have permission? We got that, well, it's complicated answer.
Greg Allman's memoir began with a scene on a bridge, but never mentioned railroad tracks. That was Randall Miller's addition in the screenplay that he wrote. And in this clip, he reads aloud.
Exterior train track. His hospital bed is in the middle of a train track.
From the start, CSX was adamant that Midnight Rider would not be allowed to shoot on any tracks that it owned. This January 27, 2014 email stating, CSX does not permit filming on our property. Later, at Miller's behest, the Midnight Rider production would specifically seek to shoot here. And in this email, sent to location manager Charlie Baxter on the morning of the shoot, a railroad representative again refuses to grant the film permission to shoot on its tracks.
To me, those emails were extremely clear that they did not have permission to be on the tracks.
And yet it was there that cast and crew assembled on the afternoon of February 20th, without Baxter in attendance, as he noted in a deposition.
Randy knew that I wasn't going to go if we didn't have permission.
How do you know that?
Because he told me.
He told you what?
That he was going to go down and going to film by the trestle, whether they had permission from CSX or not.
They began filming by the trestle, and then, at Miller's direction, on it. Miller's attorney, Ed Garland, asserts that his client had been told the tracks posed no risk.
Randy Miller had no perception of danger and was relying on his team that had never failed him, that he was in a safe place. He'd been told there were just 2 trains and those had gone.
But in fact, the Midnight Rider production had no way of knowing when a train might be coming, as railroad safety expert and film consultant Art Miller notes.
There is no freight train schedule I can rely on to make sure there'll be no train on my track.
It's a day-to-day thing. There's not such a thing as a freight train schedule that approximates what, say, a major airline might publish.
Attorney Jeff Harris has filed a lawsuit on behalf of Sarah Jones's parents.
And I think they said, well, you know, we don't have actual permission, but ultimately we're just going to try to steal this shot.
If so, it would apparently not be the first time Randall Miller had stolen a shot. Take this subway scene from his 2013 movie CBGB, a scene he brought up in this panel discussion.
We're not allowed to shoot in the New York subways. I don't know if you know that, but you're not allowed to.
There were absolutely no rules against what he did, and all he did was just take a camera without a bunch of lights and film some small shots.
The MTA in New York sees things differently, though, with multiple requirements for any shooting in the subway. At Midnight Rider, the consequences of pushing the limits would prove deadly.
they thought they could make up their own rules. They pushed it too far.
How does that make you feel, that they thought they could make up their own rules?
The audacity to put someone else's life in such danger.
They wanted to get the shot, so whatever it took to get the shot is what they did. The entire crew was put in a situation where we didn't know what to do, and we all had to basically run for our lives.
It's true, as shown by the startling evidence taken by a camera mounted inside CSX Q12519. It shows the Midnight Rider crew racing off the bridge as the train that would need a mile of track to stop rapidly approaches the bed that's been placed across the rails. Look again and listen as the dramatic scene unfolds. 26 seconds before impact, the engineer starts to blare the horn continuously. Members of the cast and crew flee to safety. 3 seconds before impact, it's too late to get the bed off the tracks. Actors William Hurt and Wyatt Russell, along with 2 crew members, scramble to make it off the trestle. 1 second before impact, people cover their ears, clinging to the bridge for their lives. On impact, the bed becomes a deadly weapon.
The train hits the bed, and the bed flies up, and apparently a portion of the hospital bed strikes Sarah and pushes her into the train.
Hairstylist Joyce Gilliard suffered a compound fracture of her left arm. She's had to have a plate put in and is also suing the producers, the railroad company, and others.
It's not just my arm that was hurt. I suffered such a traumatic experience seeing my coworker, friend, lose her life because of someone else's negligence.
Up next, in the hot seat, in court and on video, the man at the center of the Sarah Jones tragedy, producer-director Randall Miller.
Unfortunately, that's not my job. Do you know where anybody was down that track before that train accident occurred? Again, it's not my job. You didn't ask CSX.
My job. Stay with us. "27-year-old Sarah Jones was doing her job. Part of the Midnight Rider crew, instructed to place their equipment and a metal bed on these railroad tracks, only to see a train coming towards them at 57 miles per hour and smashing into the bed.
The bed was still on the track. The front of the train hit the bed. The debris of the bed is what caused most of the injuries.
The shrapnel had apparently hit her and caused her to knock her into the train.
Wayne County 911.
Can you get my location where I am? I would think we need an ambulance. Well, someone got hit by a train.
7 crew members suffered injuries in the accident. Sarah Jones lost her life.
It's clear that certainly the producers and director, they messed up real bad.
It was a live track. There were tracks elsewhere in the vicinity that were not live tracks that could have been used.
She's right. 2020 found this train trestle just a few hours away, where, for a small fee, an on-site railroad official shut down train traffic so we could film safely. Joyce Gilliard was recuperating when producer-director Randall Miller paid her a visit.
He came to my hospital room a couple days after the tragedy happened. He didn't say anything, he just cried. He just cried.
In July of 2014, the Wayne County DA charged Randall Miller and 3 other members of the Midnight Rider team, producer Jay Sedrish, first assistant director Hillary Schwartz, and producer Jody Savin, Randall Miller's spouse, with trespassing and involuntary manslaughter. Each pleaded not guilty.
If they'd have just followed the emails or followed the safety requirements by the film industry, Sarah Jones would be alive today.
Earlier that year, in April, Randall Miller had plans to resume production on Midnight Rider. Greg Allman had seen enough and sued to prevent that, compelling Randall Miller to testify on video about the tragedy and saying one phrase 3 times.
Did you even employ anyone to go down the railroad track, maybe 3 or 4 miles down, to warn people when the train was coming?
Unfortunately, that's not my job.
Do you know where anybody was down that track before that train accident occurred?
Again, it's not my job.
You didn't ask CSX how many trains were coming down that trestle, did you?
Again, that's not my job.
That is his job. He's the director. Now, the first assistant director is responsible in the industry traditionally for safety. But Randall Miller's ultimate job is to make sure that what he's doing as director is not putting his crew, or the cast for that matter, in jeopardy. And he did not do that.
I heard that if a train were to come, that at the very least we'd have 60 seconds.
And you actually believe that you can get a metal bed off the track and the people off the track in 60 seconds?
Well, I didn't. Yes.
Those final seconds in slow motion show actor Wyatt Russell running with his guitar as a cameraman hustles towards safety, and actor William Hurt making his way to the other side of the trestle where Randall Miller had put him.
You had a written permission, sir, to be on the train track. Is that what you're telling this court on your oath?
We had permission from Rainier, who gave us the permission to be there.
The company Rainier owned the land adjoining the tracks in the trestle bridge, but did not own the tracks themselves or the trestle bridge, where the deadly shoot occurred.
Did you see a written permission from CSX to put those people on that track? That's a simple question.
I did not do the permits.
You didn't see any permit before you asked those people to get on the train track?
I did not see the permits, no. I was in the middle of the track, and I almost died.
That, at least, is true, as the end of this video shows. Randall Miller trying to move the bed and then falling onto the tracks as the train comes near, rescued just seconds from death by the woman shooting this very footage.
The train seemed to be so far away, and then all of a sudden just right there. Randall fell onto the track, and so I dropped my camera and grabbed him.
Randall Miller's life was saved. It was 27-year-old Sarah Jones who did die on these tracks.
The people who made poor choices that day need to be held fully accountable for what they did.
When we come back, a heartbreaking journey up the river with Sarah Jones's parents. And at last, justice for Sarah. Don't go away.
I'm not trying to be a masochist at all, but I want to see that train.
For the first time, Richard and Elizabeth Jones have come to the place where their daughter Sarah died, floating beneath the century-old trestle when a train rumbles across.
Okay. I want to experience it. I want to see what it's like.
Oh my God. How fast is that going?
They have come in search of a kind of closure. Yet this day also brings painful reminders of their loss.
They couldn't get out of the way.
See the arrogance of someone putting my baby on the track. And the fear she must have felt. Can't imagine.
When director Randall Miller had a hospital bed placed upon live railroad tracks to shoot a scene for his film Midnight Rider, the world would know the awful result. 7 crew members injured by a passing train. Sarah Jones dead. And one more shock. The footage from that day would be fully edited into a movie scene by the Midnight Rider team to preserve a tax credit, Randall Miller's lawyers say. A dream sequence in which the main character Greg Allman chooses not to follow his deceased brother Dwayne to a premature death. These shots, a stark contrast to what would take place just moments afterwards. Chaos, horror, and the death of Sarah Jones. Now Hollywood awaited a bombshell trial in Jessup, Georgia, population 10,000. If convicted, Midnight Rider's writer, producer, director Randall Miller, along with 3 of his associates, stood to serve as much as 10 years in prison. Yet on March 9th, 2015, as the trial is set to begin, the story of Midnight Rider takes its final, unexpected turn.
On a counsel,
Randall Miller takes a plea with the camera rolling.
Will you outline the plea agreement for the defendant and for the court?
The defendant will be sentenced to a 10-year term. He will serve 2 years in custody in the county jail. He will pay a fine of $20,000.
And one other notable proviso.
He cannot serve as a director, producer, first assistant director, or a supervisor on any film where he has a responsibility for the safety of other people for the entire 10 years.
But before the judge imposes the plea bargain sentence,
we would call Richard Jones, who was the father of Sarah, to the stand.
Poignant moments, victim impact statements from the Jones family.
My dear Sarah, there's a deep sadness in my heart, a hole through the middle of my soul. A beautiful human being and a bright light source was stripped away from what I believe was rooted in selfishness.
Sarah always gave you her better side, her uncontested presence of who she was, and you knew where she stood on most any subject. She was genuine, she was down to earth.
Then, with some reluctance, the judge accepts the plea.
The plea is knowingly, intelligently, and voluntarily made. The plea may be entered.
Randall Miller becomes the first director in the history of the movies to go to jail for a death on the set.
It was a very big deal because in California that they're invincible. It showed that directors and producers are in fact responsible and can be held responsible if a crew member dies.
Producer Jay Sedrich and first assistant director Hilary Schwartz also plead out with no jail time. Randall Miller is taken into custody to begin serving his time, blowing a kiss to his wife, Jody Savin, who sees the charges against her dropped.
It is him accepting responsibility and him standing up and saying, if a message needs to be sent, I am willing to be the one. Because in the last analysis, I didn't make sure that everything was working right.
I believe it sends a message, frankly, that if you do not respect those that you're in charge of, that you may end up behind bars.
Randall Miller declined to speak with 2020, but in the statement, he said he pled guilty in part out of respect for the Jones family and to not put them through a difficult trial. I am heartbroken over this. Sarah Jones' death galvanized members of the filmmaking community, who vowed to again make safety the top priority.
Never again let someone's daughter die.
We are
Sarah Jones.
Sarah Jones. Sarah Jones.
The industry Sarah so loved, to which she dedicated and lost her life, has responded, putting out safety PSAs. Countless movies and TV shows using slates like the ones she once held that mark every shot with a tribute to Sarah. Nowhere is her memory more cherished than on the Vampire Diaries set, where the first shot of the day is called the Jonesy as a safety reminder.
The first shot is dedicated to Sarah Jones. Here we go, the Jonesy's up. Jonesy B mark.
Where safety briefings like this one are a common occurrence.
Quick safety notes for the day, again a reminder.
Where her loss remains unfathomable and images of her remain unforgettable. As star Matthew Davis recalls.
The last day I ever saw Sarah, we'd rented some bikes and we're just bombing around Amsterdam and had just the best time together. I feel as blessed as I do that my memories of her are so positive and so wonderful.
We feel so blessed. To have had a daughter, to have had her for 27 years was wonderful.
Sarah Jones's parents have formed a foundation in her honor to promote safety on film sets. The civil lawsuit they filed against Randall Miller and others involved in the production was later settled. Joyce Gilliard dropped her lawsuit against Miller, but as of 2016, her case against CSX remains open. Gilliard is once again working as a hairstylist in the film industry and keeps in touch with the Jones family. And on many television sets, the Jonesy shot is still being done at the start of each day. Up next, a child in trouble.
I just wanted to say thank you for letting me love you.
But is it real?
There's no way that's not real. How can that not be real?
A celebrity scam that shook several stars to the core.
I felt so violated and scared.
It's sort of like emotional terrorism.
Stay with us. For most people, their only brush with celebrity is through the TV set or movie screen. But some want to get much closer. And as one famous couple found, that desire can lead to some very frightening consequences. As David Wright first reported in 2014, it's a classic story with a dark, new twist.
Wow, I want to be him.
It now seems like a warning. Brad Paisley's hit song about being hoodwinked on the internet.
I work down at the pizza pit. I drive an old Hyundai.
In the music video, the original George Costanza, Jason Alexander, plays a sci-fi nerd who passes himself off online as the ultra-cool Paisley.
What are the lyrics? How does it go?
Online, I'm out in Hollywood, I'm 6'5", I look damn good. I love a good glass of wine, you know, those little stats. It's the idea of the fantasy world that the internet has become.
But you've now experienced the dark side of that.
Yeah, and the dark side has been there all along.
Brad and his wife, actress Kimberly Williams Paisley, had no idea just how dark it could get until they were sucked into a cruel and elaborate hoax. A hoax that left Kim paralyzed with fear.
I felt so violated and scared.
Brad demanding justice.
It's sort of like emotional terrorism.
It all started with an email sent by a total stranger. One of thousands of emails, but this one stood out. From a mother with her daughter's dying wish.
She was 8 years old and had neuroblastoma, and had seen a movie of mine called The Christmas Shoes. Said that her daughter had found great hope and inspiration from this movie.
Always know that I'm going to be here.
She said that her daughter had begged her to get in touch with me, so it sounded very sort of real. I read that and I thought, well, I would love to just talk to her and say hi.
Talk they did, by phone, email, and text.
I heard this rustling and she put this little girl on the phone and said, this was Claire.
Hi, my Kim. I just wanted to say thank you for letting me love you, and thank you for being my miracle.
And I remember this instinct in me thinking, what if this is a hoax? But it was so quickly trumped by an overwhelming feeling, what if it's not a hoax? And I have a chance to help this little girl.
She explained how easy it was to get hooked.
It was totally plausible to me, yeah. They weren't saying, can you send money? They weren't saying, can you come visit? They were just saying, I just want to talk to you.
And then it started to get weird.
Jesus loves me, this I know.
Supposedly at death's door, the little girl sang this song for Kim. And Brad got on the phone and sang to her, Amazing Grace.
You're singing to someone's dying kid. In the middle of it, there's no way that's not real. How can that not be real?
And right when they're hooked, the hammer drops. They get the call they're now dreading. Little Claire is dead.
The call came, and it was very, very sort of to the point, and she just said she's gone.
It's, you know, a parent's worst nightmare.
And my wife started bawling.
She hit my softest spot. Like, as a mother, you know, wanting my kids to be okay.
Hi, it's just Carrie.
The calls continued, got even more outlandish.
I also wanted to know if there's a version of your husband singing Amazing Grace. I could use that for the service.
Check out this message detailing plans for the funeral.
Oh, and if it was okay to put your picture in the casket like she had requested. And I hope you have a really good weekend. And thank you for everything. Bye-bye.
Almost immediately, the story started to unravel.
I said, where can I send flowers for the funeral?
And she didn't have an address for it.
She said, oh, don't. Just send a donation to your local children's hospital. And I mean, I had like a physical reaction. Every red flag went up. And I remember just looking at people around me. Who is it? How many people were involved in this scam? And are they right here? Are they watching me right now?
You were worried they might be a threat to you.
Yes. This person was crazy.
I watched my wife buckle when she realized this wasn't a real girl. You know, and I vowed that, and I said, I'm going to find her. I'm going to find her, and I'm going to make sure that this person is not able to do this.
What the Paisleys didn't know at the time is that this deception was even bigger than they had imagined. A host of celebrities had been scammed too, among them Natalie Grant, Melissa Gilbert, Kate Gosselin, and even some of the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders. For a time, they all thought it was real. But after one suspicious celebrity tipped off an ABC News producer, she realized he wasn't the only one. Alyssa Litoff started comparing notes with all of the victims, finding in each case the hoaxer used almost the exact same MO as with the Paisleys.
A gospel singer named Carmen Hope Thomas. It is stage 4 neuroblastoma, basically the exact same thing that was written to Natalie Grant. We've confirmed at least a dozen people.
And Kate Gosselin actually dedicated an episode of her show?
Yes, on the screen it said, "In loving memory of Hope."
Another producers emailed Kate Gosselin when put 2 and 2 together.
When I received your email, I yelled out loud. I mean, I said, "Oh my gosh."
Melissa Gilbert of Little House on the Prairie tweeted us and said she was a victim too. But that's not all. It soon became clear the hoaxer wasn't just talking to celebrities. She was seeking out cancer victims as well, stealing their photos and stories. We went to meet one family, the Thomases of Tiffin, Ohio. Their daughter, Christy, died in 2006 of, guess what, neuroblastoma.
And she just had an infectious smile that people would just fall in love with Christy.
The scammers stole Christy's image straight off the Thomas family's memorial website.
I had one of the detectives tell me a while ago that it was almost like she knew my story better than I knew my story. She had read my journal entries so many times that it was like she had internalized it, and then when she would be calling this famous people, it was almost she had convinced herself she really was me.
That's the sickest part about this to me. That is the part that when I start to talk about that, that's when I get really mad. That there were real kids, that there were real photos.
Does it matter to you that she didn't ask for money?
Yeah, I think that's sicker. I would have welcomed the thought that this was something as simple as a woman scheming, scamming you. Then it's like, okay, well, at least money's involved. When she was all along really careful to not do that, then you realize she's just enjoying this.
But stopping her might not be so easy. It may be morally wrong to fool someone online, but it's not necessarily illegal.
She hadn't technically committed a crime because she didn't ask for money. And that shows you what a pro she was.
Well, maybe not a pro exactly, because the mysterious hoaxer got caught in her own web. Some of the images sent to her victims contained GPS data from the camera they were taken on, and that data led here, to Douglas, Wyoming, hometown of the jackalope, a mythical creature used to fool city slickers, fitting mascot for a hoaxer's hideout.
I don't think she thought at any point that law enforcement would track her down in Douglas, Wyoming.
That's Kevin Lovewell, the lawman who tracked her down to a specific address in Douglas, right where the GPS markers on those digital images said she would be. He says when he confronted her, she didn't deny it.
Easiest confession I probably ever got out of somebody.
You have the right to remain silent.
This is an audio tape of one of her first interviews with police.
I had no idea he was going to phone me. I never asked for him to phone me.
And she may not have asked for money either, but she did make one crucial mistake. It turned out she did take something of monetary value. Brad Paisley's song, Amazing Grace.
The performance itself has value.
It does.
Even if you're just singing down the phone.
Right.
Because it was Brad Paisley singing Amazing Grace, turns out it was worth a lot.
$5,000 or more. At that point, it made it a felony.
The hoaxer pled guilty to theft of services and served jail time.
This was Al Capone being caught on tax evasion.
It really was, yeah.
Hey there. You're Hope Jackson, huh?
We found her at a KOA campground.
We've been looking forward to meeting you.
Finally, after 8 months of searching for the woman responsible for toying with so many people's emotions, we're face to face with her. Hope Jackson, 37-year-old mother of 2 perfectly healthy kids.
And you've never, God forbid, had the experience of losing a child?
No. No. I hope I never do, yeah.
Did you not think it was incredibly bad karma to be acting this out?
Well, now looking back on it, of course, yeah.
We spent a whole day with her. She was contrite.
I'm 100% responsible for this, and I have to live with that every day of my life.
Philosophical.
I just hope this brings some sort of healing.
And broke down in tears again and again.
Horrible, shameful, I hurt, I'm wrong.
We confronted her with an email she wrote Angela Thomas, promising she would stop using Christy's picture.
I hope to learn how to be a better person and mother.
I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to say how sorry I am, and I will not be using your photos ever again or anyone else's. Thank you for your time.
And you sent that?
Mm-hmm.
But it was after you sent that that you first contacted Kim and Brad.
Right.
After saying to this woman, I will not be using your photos ever again,
And
or anyone else's.
I didn't use her photos ever again. I never,
Or anyone
well,
else's.
Mm-hmm.
If you lied to her, why should we believe you now?
I'm not asking you to believe me because, like I said, my actions are going to speak louder than my words are.
Now she's out on probation.
And I'm horribly sorry, for all those people that I hurt.
Hope Jackson told us for her, money was never the object.
What did you get out of it?
Just that moment of being special, and that's all it was. And
a voice on the other end of the phone.
Yeah.
Have you really stopped?
Yeah, 100%.
The Paisleys are willing to give her the benefit of the doubt.
I hope that the people around her will encourage her to get help.
I root for her to be a case study that never does it again.
But they feel the law needs to be changed.
Let's work on that as a society. Let's make it illegal to use someone's child's photo for something that they aren't allowing you to use it for.
And then her laugh will come back to me. So.
Angela Thomas, whose real picture was stolen, says she's worried those lies could make people like Paisleys think twice about being compassionate.
The next little girl does want to have Brad Paisley sing to them. I hope haven't had their hearts hardened.
The Paisleys insist that's not going to happen. But next time, probably bear in mind Brad's slightly jaded hit song.
So much cooler all right. So much cooler all right.
Hope Jackson's probation is scheduled to end in 2018. Until then, she's not allowed to use the internet or social media. She continues to express her regrets for what she did